The champagne bubbles in my glass matched the effervescent laughter surrounding me, a stark contrast to the hollowness expanding in my chest. I sat alone at table 19, the dreaded singles table, tucked away in the corner of the lavish ballroom where my cousin Sophia was celebrating her wedding. The white satin tablecloth felt cool under my fidgeting fingertips, a small comfort as I watched couples twirl across the dance floor, their happiness a silent mockery of my solitude. "You can do this, Ellie," I whispered to myself, smoothing down the burgundy bridesmaid dress that had cost me 2 weeks' worth of tips from the diner where I worked. The material clung uncomfortably to my skin in the warm room, a physical reminder of how out of place I felt. 3 months ago, I would have attended with Daniel, my fiancé of 2 years. Now, his absence was a gaping wound, still fresh from his sudden departure. "I'm not ready for this life, Ellie," he had said, packing his things while I stood frozen in our small apartment. "I need someone more ambitious." The diamond ring he'd placed on my finger now sat in a drawer at home, a painful reminder of broken promises. I took another sip of champagne, wincing as the bubbles burned my throat. The wedding band transitioned to a slow song, and couples gravitated toward each other like magnets. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Where are you? Come dance. There are tons of single guys here." I slipped my phone back into my clutch without responding. The last thing I needed was my well-meaning cousin playing matchmaker. The weight of pitying glances from relatives had become unbearable. Poor Ellie, left at the altar. Well, not quite the altar, but close enough for the family gossip mill. The crystal chandelier above cast fractured light across the room, creating shadows that danced along the walls. I focused on the play of light, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. My gaze drifted to the entrance, where a sudden shift in energy caught my attention. 3 men entered the ballroom, and the atmosphere changed instantly. The first 2 were clearly security, broad-shouldered, vigilant, with barely concealed earpieces. But it was the man between them who commanded attention without even trying. Tall and imposing, he wore a tailored black suit that contrasted sharply with the crisp white of his dress shirt. No tie, just the top button left casually undone. A subtle rebellion against formality. His dark hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place, framing features that seemed carved from marble by a sculptor obsessed with creating perfection. His jawline was sharp enough to cut glass, shadowed by the faintest hint of stubble that only emphasized its strength. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Dark as midnight and just as mysterious, scanning the room with calculated precision. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, every step purposeful. I couldn't look away, even as a voice in my head whispered warnings. This man was dangerous, not in the way that spoke of physical violence, though his powerful frame certainly suggested that capacity, but in the way that promised to shatter carefully constructed walls and expose vulnerabilities better left hidden. I forced myself to look down at my half-empty champagne glass, unsettled by my own reaction. The last thing I needed was to be captivated by another man, especially one who screamed trouble from every pore. "Ellie!" My cousin Mia appeared beside me, her bridesmaid dress identical to mine, but somehow looking infinitely better on her petite frame. "Why are you hiding back here? Come dance with us." "I'm just taking a break," I lied, my smile not quite reaching my eyes. "These heels are killing me." Mia's gaze drifted past me, her eyes widening slightly. "Oh my God," she whispered, leaning closer. "Do you know who just walked in?" I shrugged, feigning disinterest despite knowing exactly who she meant. "That's Dante Russo," she hissed, excitement making her voice tremble slightly. "The Dante Russo. What is he doing at Sophia's wedding?" The name triggered a vague recognition. I'd seen it in newspaper headlines, usually accompanied by words like alleged and organized crime. Never convicted, always suspected. The rumors painted him as a modern kingpin, with hands in everything from real estate to nightclubs, all fronts for more sinister enterprises. "I think his family owns the venue," Mia continued, her eyes never leaving him. "They say he never attends events here personally, though. I wonder—" "Mia," someone called from across the room, and she squeezed my arm. "Don't disappear, okay? Promise you'll at least dance once tonight." I nodded, watching her flutter away, grateful for the reprieve from conversation. My momentary peace was shattered when I noticed my ex-fiancé's sister, Vanessa, approaching with determined steps, pulling a tall man behind her. My stomach dropped. I wasn't prepared for this confrontation. "Ellie!" Vanessa's voice carried the false warmth I'd grown to recognize during my time with Daniel. "What a surprise to see you here. Are you alone?" The last word dripped with barely concealed satisfaction. Of course, she knew I was alone. Daniel had probably told his entire family about leaving me. "I'm with the bridal party," I responded, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Oh, that's right. You're Sophia's second cousin, was it?" Her smile never reached her eyes. "This is Marcus. He's a doctor." The man beside her extended his hand, his expression caught between embarrassment and pity. I shook it briefly, already calculating the fastest escape route. "Daniel was so sorry he couldn't make it today," Vanessa continued, twisting the knife deeper. "He's in Milan now, did you know? His new girlfriend's family has connections in the fashion industry. They've been very helpful with his career." Each word was precisely chosen to inflict maximum damage. I felt the heat of humiliation creeping up my neck, threatening to choke me. My eyes burned with unshed tears as I struggled to maintain composure. "I should check if Sophia needs," I began, preparing to stand. "Actually, she's waiting for me," the deep voice came from behind me, smooth as aged whiskey and just as intoxicating. A large hand settled gently on my bare shoulder, warm and steady. I didn't need to turn to know who it belonged to. Somehow, Dante Russo was standing behind my chair, his presence immediately dominating the small space. I apologize for being late, Tesoro. His Italian accent caressed the endearment, making it sound sinfully intimate. He leaned down, his lips close to my ear as he whispered, "Pretend I'm your husband tonight." Before I could process his words, he straightened and extended his hand to Vanessa, whose expression had transformed from smug superiority to stunned disbelief. "Dante Russo," he introduced himself, his tone pleasant, but carrying an undercurrent of authority that made it clear he was accustomed to being obeyed. "Ellie's husband." The lie hung in the air between us, outrageous and impossible. I should have corrected him immediately, should have pulled away from his touch that still burned against my skin. Instead, I found myself frozen, caught in a strange limbo between shock and inexplicable relief. Vanessa's eyes darted between us, clearly trying to reconcile this development with what she thought she knew. Husband? But Daniel said, "Perhaps Daniel doesn't know everything about Ellie's life," Dante interrupted smoothly, his hand moving to the small of my back as he pulled out my chair. "If you'll excuse us, my wife promised me a dance." I rose on unsteady legs, hyper-aware of his hand guiding me, of the subtle scent of his cologne. Sandalwood and something darker, more complex. As he led me away from the table, I caught a glimpse of one of his security men watching us intently, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" I finally managed to whisper once we were out of earshot, my heart hammering against my ribs. Dante guided me toward the dance floor, his movements fluid and confident. "Rescuing you, it seems," he replied, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "That woman was trying to humiliate you." "But why would you—" "Let's just say I have a particular distaste for people who prey on vulnerability." His hand tightened slightly on my waist as we reached the edge of the dance floor. Besides, the look on her face was worth the small deception, wasn't it? A reluctant smile tugged at my lips despite my confusion. Vanessa had indeed looked like she'd swallowed something particularly unpleasant. "Now," Dante said, turning to face me fully, "we should make this look convincing." Without warning, he pulled me gently into his arms, one hand settling on the small of my back, the other taking my hand in his. The contact sent a jolt through me, like touching a live wire. Up close, his presence was even more overwhelming, the subtle power in his shoulders, the faint scar that traced his left eyebrow, the impossible depth of his eyes that seemed to see right through my defenses. "I don't even know you," I said, trying to ignore how perfectly I seemed to fit against him. "That's the beauty of pretense, isn't it?" His lips curved into a smile that transformed his severe features, making him look younger, almost boyish. We can be whoever we want for one night. The band played a slow, haunting melody as he guided me across the floor with surprising grace for a man of his size. I was acutely aware of the eyes following us, curious, speculative, envious. For a brief, dizzying moment, I allowed myself to enjoy the fantasy. To be the woman on Dante Russo's arm, desired and protected rather than abandoned and pitied. "Why are you really here?" I asked, needing to ground myself in reality. "At this wedding?" Something flickered in his eyes, caution perhaps. "I own the property. Occasionally I like to make an appearance, ensure everything is running smoothly, and you always rescue random women from uncomfortable social situations." His laugh was unexpected, a rich, warm sound that rumbled through his chest. "Only the intriguing ones." The music shifted, and Dante adjusted seamlessly, pulling me slightly closer. I should have pulled away, should have thanked him for the rescue and returned to my table. Instead, I found myself relaxing into his embrace, allowing the steady rhythm of his movements to lull me into a dangerous comfort. "Your ex was a fool," he said suddenly, his voice carrying a hard edge that hadn't been there before. I stiffened, pulling back slightly to look at him. "How did you—" "I'm observant," he replied simply. And that woman mentioned Daniel. The rest was easy to piece together. Embarrassment flooded through me. Was my heartbreak so obvious, so pathetically transparent that even a stranger could read it? "It's nothing to be ashamed of," Dante continued, as if reading my thoughts. "We've all been betrayed at some point. The question is what we do afterward." Before I could respond, I noticed Daniel's sister watching us intently from across the room, her phone in hand. A chill ran down my spine. "She's taking pictures," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. "If Daniel sees—" "Let her," Dante said, his expression hardening. In fact, without warning, he spun me elegantly before dipping me low, his face hovering inches from mine. "Give her something worth photographing." Time seemed to stop as he held me there, suspended in his powerful arms, our faces close enough that I could feel his breath mingling with mine. His eyes asked a silent question, giving me a chance to pull away. I should have. Every logical part of my brain screamed warnings. Instead, caught in a moment of reckless abandon, I nodded almost imperceptibly. His lips found mine with startling gentleness, a stark contrast to the strength evident in every line of his body. The kiss was brief but devastating, sending heat spiraling through me and leaving me breathless when he finally set me upright again. "I think we've made our point," he murmured, satisfaction evident in his tone as he glanced over my shoulder. "Your photographer friend looks positively apoplectic." I couldn't bring myself to look, still reeling from the kiss and the strange electric current that now seemed to flow between us. This was madness. I didn't know this man, this dangerous, powerful man who commanded rooms with his presence and kissed strangers at weddings. "I should go," I said, taking a step back, needing distance to clear my head. "Thank you for the intervention, but I don't think—" "Have dinner with me." It wasn't a question, but neither was it quite a command. "Tomorrow night." "I don't—" "One dinner," he pressed, his gaze intense, "to thank me properly for my gallant rescue." A smile tugged at my lips despite myself. "Is that what it was? What would you call it?" "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "But I know getting involved with you would be a mistake." Something darkened in his expression. "You don't know anything about me. I know enough. The whispers, the security men, the aura of controlled danger that surrounded him like a second skin. Men like you are complicated. And you've had enough complications," he finished for me, understanding flickering in his eyes. "Fair enough." He reached into his jacket and produced a business card, offering it to me between two fingers. "When you change your mind, call this number. Directly to me, no intermediaries. I won't change my mind," I said, even as my fingers closed around the heavy cardstock. His smile was knowing, almost predatory. "We'll see." With that, he lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that somehow felt more intimate than the one we'd shared on the dance floor. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Ellie," he murmured, before turning and walking away, his security falling into step behind him. I stood frozen on the edge of the dance floor, the weight of his card burning in my hand, the ghost of his touch still lingering on my skin. Around me, the wedding continued. Music playing, couples dancing, champagne flowing, but something fundamental had shifted, like the first tremor before an earthquake. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that single, reckless moment when I'd allowed a dangerous man to pull me into his arms, would be the pebble that started an avalanche, burying the life I'd known under its unstoppable force. I slept fitfully that night, dreams filled with dark eyes and whispered promises. When morning came, I found myself staring at Dante's business card on my nightstand. The embossed black text against cream cardstock read simply, Dante Russo, with a phone number beneath. No company name, no title. A man who needed no introduction. I tucked the card into my wallet, telling myself I was only keeping it as a memento of a strange night. A story I could tell someday when the wound of Daniel's betrayal had healed into a scar I could touch without pain. The diner where I worked was busier than usual for a Sunday. I moved between tables with practiced efficiency, refilling coffee cups and taking orders, grateful for the distraction of mundane tasks. My apartment was too quiet, too full of echoes from a life shared with someone who'd found me lacking. Earth to Ellie. Maria, my fellow waitress, snapped her fingers in front of my face. Table 7's been trying to get your attention for 5 minutes. Sorry, I mumbled, forcing myself back to the present. What's going on with you today? You're a million miles away. I shrugged, unwilling to explain. How could I describe last night? The rescued damsel in distress, and the dangerous man playing knight. It sounded absurd in the harsh light of day. Nothing. Just tired from the wedding. Maria's eyes lit with interest. Oh, right. How was it? Meet any cute guys? The image of Dante's face inches from mine flashed unbidden in my mind. No, I lied. Just the usual wedding stuff. She looked unconvinced, but was distracted by the bell above the door announcing new customers. I turned automatically, coffee pot in hand, and nearly dropped it. 2 men in dark suits entered, their builds and watchful eyes immediately familiar. The security detail from last night. My heart stuttered as I searched for their employer, but they appeared to be alone. They took a booth near the window, and I hesitated, irrationally afraid to approach, yet strangely disappointed that Dante wasn't with them. You want me to take that table? Maria asked, following my gaze. No, I said quickly. I've got it. I smoothed down my apron and crossed the diner, trying to project professional indifference. Up close, I recognized one of them as the man who had been watching Dante and me dance. Good morning, I greeted, placing menus before them. Coffee? The larger of the 2 men studied me with surprising intensity, before nodding. Miss Sullivan, Mr. Russo sends his regards. I nearly fumbled the cups I was setting down. You're here because of me? The second man, leaner but no less intimidating, gave a slight smile. The boss mentioned meeting you last night. Said you worked at a diner. Wasn't hard to find which one. A chill ran down my spine. So you just tracked me down? We were in the neighborhood, the first man said, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. Coffee, black, and whatever breakfast special you recommend. I took their orders mechanically, mind racing. They were here watching me, reporting back to Dante. The thought should have terrified me, should have sent me running for the phone to call the police. Instead, I felt a perverse thrill, a forbidden excitement at being the focus of such attention. The men ate quietly, left a generous tip, and departed without further conversation. But their presence lingered like a promise, or a warning. When my shift ended at 3, I stepped outside to find a sleek black Bentley parked across the street. The back window lowered as I watched, revealing Dante's unmistakable profile. Get in, he called, his voice carrying easily across the distance. I hesitated, aware of Maria watching wide-eyed from inside the diner. I don't recall agreeing to see you again. Yet here I am. There was amusement in his tone, as if my resistance was an entertaining diversion. I thought I'd save you the trouble of calling. That's presumptuous. I prefer optimistic. He pushed open the door. 15 minutes. That's all I ask. 15 minutes. What harm could come from 15 minutes? I crossed the street before I could talk myself out of it, sliding into the leather interior that smelled of expensive cologne and new car. "Your men were in my diner this morning," I said, as the car pulled smoothly into traffic. A driver I hadn't noticed behind the wheel. "Marco and Vincent," Dante confirmed, seemingly unconcerned by my accusatory tone. "They said you make excellent coffee. They were checking up on me. They were ensuring you weren't inconvenienced by our little performance last night." He turned to face me fully, his expression serious. "Did Daniel's sister cause any more trouble?" The question caught me off guard. I'd expected denials or evasions, not what sounded like genuine concern. "No," I admitted. "But she definitely sent those photos to him. He texted me at 2 a.m. demanding to know who you were." Something dangerous flashed in Dante's eyes. "And what did you tell him?" "Nothing. I blocked his number." The small act of defiance had been strangely empowering. He lost the right to question my choices when he walked out. Approval warmed Dante's expression. "Good." The car turned onto a tree-lined street in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods, where old money mingled with new power behind wrought iron gates and manicured hedges. We pulled into a private drive, stopping before a stunning modern mansion of glass and stone. "This isn't 15 minutes, I protested as Dante opened his door. "Where are we?" "My home." He extended his hand. "And I promise, if you want to leave after 15 minutes, my driver will take you anywhere you wish to go." Curiosity won over caution. I placed my hand in his, allowing him to help me from the car. His touch sent the same electric current through me as it had last night. Unwelcome, yet undeniable. His home was a study in understated luxury. Soaring ceilings, minimalist furnishings in shades of gray and black, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a perfectly landscaped garden. No photos adorned the walls, no personal touches betrayed the man who lived here. It could have been a museum, or a high-end hotel. "You live here alone?" I asked, following him through the foyer. "I value my privacy." He led me to a sunlit kitchen that looked barely used, its gleaming surfaces pristine. "Wine?" "It's 4 in the afternoon. Is that a no?" I hesitated, then shrugged. "Why not? I'm apparently making all sorts of questionable decisions today." A smile played at the corners of his mouth as he selected a bottle from a built-in wine cooler. "I wouldn't call having a drink with me questionable. Unwise, perhaps, but not questionable. Is there a difference?" "Intent." He poured 2 glasses of deep red wine. "Questionable implies uncertainty about motives. I've been very clear about mine. Have you?" I accepted the glass he offered, because from where I'm standing, you've been anything but clear. You pretended to be my husband, had your men track me down, and now I'm standing in your kitchen drinking wine worth more than my weekly rent. What exactly are your intentions, Mr. Russo? He leaned against the counter, studying me with those penetrating eyes that seemed to strip away pretense. "I want to know you, Ellie Sullivan. The real you, not the woman playing small to avoid more heartbreak." His directness was disarming. "You don't know anything about me. I know more than you think." He took a deliberate sip of his wine. 27 years old, graduated with honors in literature but working as a waitress. No living parents, one failed engagement to a man who didn't deserve you, and eyes that light up when you're challenged, like they're doing right now. Cold fear washed through me. "You investigated me." "Of course I did." He said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I don't invite strangers into my home." Normal people get to know each other through conversation, not background checks. I've never claimed to be normal. His gaze never wavered. "Does it bother you that I wanted to know who you were before pursuing you?" "So you are pursuing me." I latched onto the admission, trying to regain some control of the conversation. Was that ever in doubt? He moved closer, his presence filling the space between us. "I wanted you the moment I saw you sitting alone at that table, trying so hard to look unbroken." His honesty stripped me of defenses. No man had ever looked at me the way Dante did, as if I were a puzzle he was determined to solve, a treasure to be claimed. "I'm not what you think I am," I said softly. "I'm not mysterious or special. I'm just getting by." "That's where you're wrong." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with unexpected tenderness. "Most people are content to merely exist, Ellie. But you, there's fire beneath that careful exterior." I saw it when you stood up to that woman, when you let me kiss you despite her. You're not just getting by. You're waiting to truly live." His words resonated in places I'd thought long dormant. Before Daniel, I'd had dreams. Of writing, of traveling, of experiencing life instead of just observing it. Somewhere along the way, those dreams had been carefully packed away, replaced by more practical considerations. "And you think you're the one to help me live?" I asked, unable to keep the skepticism from my voice. "I think I'm the one who sees you," he replied simply. "The question is whether you're brave enough to be seen." The challenge hung between us, charged with possibility. 15 minutes had long since passed, yet I made no move to leave. Something about Dante Russo pulled at me, a gravitational force I couldn't explain or resist. "Have dinner with me," he said again. But this time it was different, not a command but a request. Almost vulnerable in its simplicity, I should have said no, should have handed back the wine glass, thanked him for the ride, and walked away from the intoxicating danger he represented. Instead, I heard myself say, "Okay." His smile transformed his face, revealing a dimple in his right cheek that softened his severe features. "Tomorrow night? I'll send a car. I can drive myself," I insisted, needing to maintain some independence. "Of course." He didn't argue, which surprised me. 8 o'clock. I'll text you the address." As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out to find a message from an unknown number. "Looking forward to tomorrow." "How did you get my number?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The same way I found your workplace." He wasn't apologetic. "I'm a thorough man, Ellie. It served me well." The reminder of who he was, what he was, sent a sobering chill through me. "These connections of yours, they're not entirely legitimate, are they?" His expression hardened slightly. "Would my answer change your mind about dinner?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. He seemed to appreciate that, nodding slowly. "Let's just say I operate in gray areas. But I have lines I don't cross, principles I don't compromise. Does that satisfy your curiosity?" It didn't, not really, but I recognized it was all I would get for now. For the moment. "Good." He took my wine glass, setting it aside. "Now, I believe I promised you could leave after 15 minutes. It's been..." He checked his watch. 43. "Are you kicking me out?" I asked, oddly disappointed. "On the contrary." His voice lowered, sending a shiver down my spine. "I'm honoring my word, even though what I really want is to keep you here all night." The naked desire in his eyes made my breath catch. No one had ever wanted me with such intensity, such focused intent. It was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. "I should go," I managed, though my body screamed otherwise. "My driver is waiting." He walked me to the door, his hand at the small of my back, a gentleman despite the predatory gleam in his eyes. "Until tomorrow, Ellie." Outside, the Bentley idled in the circular drive. As promised, Dante's driver took me directly home, to the small apartment that now seemed shabby and colorless after the opulence of his world. That night, as I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed again. "Dream of me." 2 simple words that followed me into sleep, where dark eyes and strong hands awaited. Monday dawned bright and clear, bringing with it a surge of nervous energy I hadn't felt in months. I spent too long choosing what to wear for work, discarded 3 outfits before settling on a simple blue dress I'd owned for years. It was ridiculous to care what I looked like at the diner, where the uniform apron would cover me anyway. But I couldn't help myself. Maria noticed immediately. Well, someone's looking pretty today." "Hot date?" "Just felt like making an effort," I lied, avoiding her knowing gaze. "Wouldn't have anything to do with those suits from yesterday, would it? Or the fancy car you got into?" I froze. "You were watching me?" "Honey, the whole diner was watching you. Not every day we see Ellie Sullivan getting into a Bentley with a man who looks like he owns half the city." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Is that who I think it is? Dante Russo?" The name on her lips sent a jolt through me. "You know him?" "Know of him. Everyone does." Her expression grew serious. "Be careful, Ellie. Men like that, they don't play by the same rules as the rest of us." "It's just dinner," I said defensively. Sure it is. She patted my arm. Just remember who you're dealing with. As if I could forget. Throughout my shift, I found myself watching the door, half expecting to see Marco and Vincent walk in again. They didn't. But the anticipation never quite left me. By 7, I was home and standing before my closet, faced with the reality that nothing I owned was appropriate for whatever restaurant Dante would choose. I settled finally on a black dress, simple but elegant, the most expensive thing I owned. I'd bought it for job interviews after graduation, before settling for waitressing when my literary ambitions yielded nothing but rejection letters. At 7:55, I was applying a final touch of lipstick when my phone buzzed. The address Dante sent was to Argento, the most exclusive Italian restaurant in the city, where reservations were reportedly booked months in advance. I arrived at 8:10, fashionably late, and fighting nerves that threatened to send me running back to my car. The maitre d' recognized Dante's name immediately, escorting me to a private dining room where candlelight cast soft shadows across white linens and crystal glasses. Dante rose as I entered, his eyes darkening appreciatively as they took in my appearance. He wore a charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, the fabric clearly custom and expensive. "You're stunning," he said simply, pulling out my chair. "Thank you." I settled nervously, hyper-aware of his presence as he reclaimed his seat across from me. "This place is incredible. The chef is an old friend." He signaled to a waiting server who immediately poured wine into our glasses. I took the liberty of ordering for us traditional Italian dishes from my grandmother's recipes. "I hope you don't mind." The presumption would have annoyed me from anyone else, but from him, it felt like care rather than control. "Not at all." "Tell me something," he said, leaning forward slightly. "Why literature? What drew you to it?" The question caught me off guard. I'd expected small talk, not immediate interest in my passions. "Words have power," I answered finally. "They can create worlds, change minds, make you feel less alone. I always wanted to be part of that, to write something that mattered. And what stopped you?" The blunt question pierced a tender spot. "Reality," I said with a bitter smile. "Turns out publishers aren't exactly fighting over unknown writers with nothing but student debt and big dreams. So you gave up?" "I adapted," I corrected, stung by his assessment. "Bills don't pay themselves with manuscript pages. And Daniel? Did he support your writing?" My silence was answer enough. I thought not. Dante's jaw tightened. Men who truly love don't stifle passion. They fuel it. The intensity in Dante's voice made me look up sharply. There was genuine anger there, as if Daniel's lack of support for my writing was a personal affront. "You speak as if you know me," I said, both unsettled and intrigued by his perception. "As if you understand what I need." "Perhaps I do." His eyes never left mine, dark and knowing. "We recognize in others what we ourselves possess: ambition, passion, the desire for more than what life has offered." Our first course arrived, delicate arancini with truffle oil that melted on my tongue. I savored the flavors, using the moment to gather my thoughts. "And what about you?" I asked finally. "What does Dante Russo desire that he doesn't already have?" Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that I'd turned the conversation toward him. "Genuine connection," he answered after a pause. "In my world, people approach with agendas, masks firmly in place. Authenticity is rare." "Is that why you're pursuing a waitress? For authenticity?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "Or is it the novelty of slumming with someone from the other side of the tracks? Rather than taking offense," Dante laughed, the sound rich and unexpected. "There it is. That fire. No pretense, no careful words to avoid offending the powerful man. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Ellie." His appreciation of my bluntness was disarming. I'd spent years with Daniel carefully moderating my opinions, smoothing rough edges to maintain peace. The freedom to speak my mind without fear of rejection was intoxicating. "You still haven't answered my question," I pressed. "Why me?" Dante studied me, his expression growing serious. "From the moment I saw you sitting alone at that wedding, I recognized something in you, a resilience beneath vulnerability. You were hurt but not broken." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Do you know how rare that is? Most people who've been betrayed either collapse or harden. You've done neither." The main course arrived, osso buco that fell off the bone, served with saffron risotto. We ate in a charged silence, his words settling over me like a caress. "Tell me about your family," I said eventually, needing to shift the focus from myself. A shadow passed over his features. "My parents emigrated from Sicily before I was born. My father started with nothing, a small restaurant in Little Italy that barely kept the lights on. He built it into something greater through sheer force of will. And now you've built it even further," I observed, carefully stepping around the rumors of exactly how he'd expanded the family business. "I've diversified," he acknowledged with a slight smile. "Real estate, hospitality, investments. The legitimate portfolio is quite substantial." The deliberate emphasis on legitimate hung between us, an acknowledgement of the unspoken. "And the other portfolio?" I asked softly, knowing I was venturing into dangerous territory. He set down his fork, wiping his mouth with a napkin before responding. "Ellie, there are aspects of my life that are complicated. I won't insult your intelligence by denying that, but I will ask you to trust that I operate with a code, with boundaries. That's not very reassuring. It's the truth." His gaze was steady, unapologetic. "I can promise you safety. I can promise you honesty within limits. I can promise that my interest in you is genuine and uncomplicated. Beyond that..." He shrugged, the gesture somehow elegant despite its simplicity. It should have been my cue to leave, to thank him for dinner and walk away from the complications he represented. Instead, I found myself nodding slowly. "Honesty within limits," I repeated. "I can understand that." Relief flickered across his face, so briefly I almost missed it. "Good. Now, tell me about this novel you're not writing." The conversation shifted to safer ground. My abandoned manuscript, his surprising knowledge of literary classics, shared opinions on films and music. By the time dessert arrived, I was laughing more freely than I had in months, caught up in the easy flow of conversation, with a man who listened as if my words were precious gifts. Outside the restaurant, the night air was cool against my flushed skin. Dante's driver waited with the Bentley, but Dante made no move toward the car. "Walk with me?" he asked, offering his arm. I hesitated only briefly before linking my arm through his. We strolled along the sidewalk, the city lights creating a private universe around us. From a distance, we might have looked like any couple enjoying an evening together, if not for the discreet security detail I now noticed following at a respectful distance. "Does it ever bother you?" I asked, nodding toward the men. "Having shadows constantly at your heels?" "It's a necessary precaution," he said, his tone matter of fact. "One adapts." "Because of your business interests? Because power creates enemies."